The Black Knight satellite. Mysterious UFO spotted. During the Cold War. Have you ever heard something that wasn't supposed to be there? A sound, a pulse, a whisper in the void. In 1960, as the Cold War raged beneath a sky thick with paranoia, a strange signal echoed above Earth. It wasn't Soviet. It wasn't American. It wasn't human. Radar operators, stationed deep in NORAD command, locked eyes with their screens. Something was moving against the rotation of Earth. Reverse orbit. Impossible. And yet it was there. Black, silent, watching. This object wasn't listed on any launch manifest, not tracked by any known agency. It orbited day after day, like a sentinel forgotten by time, or perhaps planted by something outside of it. They called it the Black Knight. But this isn't a fairy tale. This is a Cold War secret buried beneath classified files and nervous glances. Tonight, we dig it up. The room was silent except for the soft whir of radar. Lieutenant Daniel Carter leaned over the console, eyes wide. "Sir, you need to see this." General Holloway stood over him, face rigid. The green blip danced unnaturally across the screen. Not like a weather balloon, not like a satellite. This one moved with purpose, almost as if it was aware. "It's going against Earth's rotation," Carter whispered. "No satellite does that." They tried to track it. They couldn't. They tried to communicate. Silence. They tried to deny it. But it kept coming back. What if I told you this isn't the first time someone saw it? What if this mysterious Black Knight has been watching us? For longer than we think? Long before 1960. Before Sputnik. Before Tesla. Yes, Nikola Tesla. In 1899, he claimed he intercepted a signal from deep space, a repeating code. At the time, everyone laughed. Delusional, they said. But now that signal matches the Black Knight's orbit pattern. Still think it's a coincidence? Let's ask the men who went silent after they saw it, because some of them never spoke again. You're probably wondering, is this real? Let's find out together. Because this story isn't just about a satellite, it's about a mystery that crosses time and stares back. And the strangest part? No one has ever claimed ownership. No one? Until now. So stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you'll hear a voice transmission intercepted by a military outpost in Greenland, one that doesn't match any known language on Earth. But don't skip ahead. If you do, you'll miss the coded message hidden in plain sight, something only a few have ever decoded. Like this video if the first few minutes gave you chills. And comment below. Do you believe something is up there, watching us? Or do you think this is just another Cold War ghost story? Whatever you believe, the Black Knight is still up there, and it doesn't blink. It began as a hum, barely audible, like a low breath across ice. Winter, 1961. Tromsø, Norway, 200 miles north of the Arctic Circle. The air was sharp, the wind cruel. But inside a radar station hidden beneath the frozen crust, things were even colder. The operators had been trained for Russian interference, spy satellites, U-2 flyovers. But this wasn't from Moscow. Johann Neustadt, 24, was manning the comms desk when he heard it. Not static, not interference, a sound that had rhythm. He adjusted the dial. The hum pulsed louder. It wasn't radio chatter. It was more like a pattern, a beat, long, short, pause, long, repeating. His heart began to thud in his chest. Something in him, instinct maybe, screamed that this shouldn't be happening. He called out, voice cracking, "Commander, you need to hear this." They recorded it, logged it, reported it to NATO High Command. The reply? Do not engage, do not respond, do not speak of this again. But Johann didn't forget. because 3 nights later, it returned. This time, with light. A black form hovered silently in the night sky over the Barents Sea. No sound, no vibration, just presence. It didn't blink, it didn't move, until it did, and when it did, it vanished without a trace. Johann's partner, Eric, who stood with him on the observation deck, dropped his thermos. The coffee steamed into the snow, but neither of them noticed, because they both saw the same thing. A dark object, long, jagged, almost organic, floating against the stars, silent, and then gone. No sonic boom, no thrusters, just silence. Johann turned to Eric. What was that? Eric didn't answer. His lips moved, but no words came. He just stood there, frozen, pale. Johann touched his shoulder, cold, damp. Something had changed in him. Something broke. For weeks after, Eric didn't speak. Not about the object, not about anything. They called in doctors, psychologists, no one could explain it. His vitals were fine, brain activity normal, but he wouldn't respond. Not a word, not even a whisper. Eventually, the report labeled it acute traumatic mutism. But Johann, he knew better. Eric wasn't scared. He wasn't hurt. He was watched. In the months that followed, more signals came. Short bursts, long intervals, always in the same pattern. But here's the twist. When scientists ran the audio through advanced modulation software, it resembled a waveform used in early pulse code communications, and when inverted, it sounded like speech. But not human speech. The Norwegian station eventually forwarded the tapes to a U.S. intelligence unit stationed in Greenland. Project SILO, they called it. Classified. Top secret. But some files leaked years later, and in one of them was this line: the object transmits a cyclical signal when in Arctic orbit, approximately 406 megahertz, pattern unrecognized, source unknown, behavior observational. Observational, that word again. As if it wasn't just orbiting, it was watching. You're probably thinking, why didn't the world react? Why wasn't this on every newspaper? Simple. The Cold War wasn't about sharing secrets. It was about hiding them. And the Black Knight? It became the biggest secret no one wanted to touch, because it wasn't Russian, it wasn't American, and if it wasn't from Earth, then who or what put it there? Let me ask you something. Have you ever stood under a night sky and felt like you weren't alone? That faint pressure in your chest, the one that makes you look over your shoulder, even when you're standing still. Johann felt that every day after the encounter. He eventually left the station, moved to a cabin. No phones, no radios. But in 1982, a journalist found him, tracked him down for a story about Cold War anomalies. And you know what Johann said? I haven't heard it in years, but sometimes, when the wind is just right, I feel it again. Now here's where it gets even stranger. A team of amateur radio operators in 1998 recorded a near-identical signal to the one Johann captured in 1961. Same pattern, same frequency. Guess where it was recorded? Tromsø. The same icy patch of nowhere. And that signal? It's still bouncing, still circling, still unexplained. So what is the Black Knight? A satellite? An alien probe? A warning? Or maybe, just maybe, it's a mirror. One that only shows us what we're not ready to see. Don't scroll away yet. Because in the next part, we'll meet someone who claims to have been in contact with it. Not just visually, but mentally. A survivor of a 1973 submarine accident, who swears the Black Knight saved his life, but left something behind, something inside him. So subscribe if you haven't, and comment below. What would you do if you saw something in the sky that stared back at you and followed you home? Because this story is only beginning. It happened in silence, No warning, no explosion, just darkness. October 1973. Somewhere beneath the Norwegian Sea, a submarine vanished from all naval comms. Its name, NSS 12 Bergstrom, a stealth recon vessel, NATO flagged. Crew, 38 men. It was supposed to patrol for Soviet activity. But what it encountered had no flag. Only one man came back. Lieutenant Emil Sorensen. At first they called it mechanical failure, an engine implosion, a pressure breach. But when the divers reached the wreck, the hull was intact, not a crack, not a scratch, like it had just shut down. Inside, all they found were empty uniforms, tools placed neatly, meals half-eaten, no bodies. Only one man remained. Emil, found lying in the torpedo chamber, eyes open, breathing. But something was different. He didn't blink much, didn't speak for 5 days. Doctors thought it was shock, until he whispered one word: sentinel. They thought he meant a Soviet drone, but he repeated it, eyes wide. Not theirs, not ours. It's been here, watching. When they asked what happened, he paused, looked at the ceiling like he could still hear something they couldn't. And then, in a voice that didn't feel like it belonged to him, he said, "They spoke in symbols, in pulses, in silence." Later, Emil would draw what he saw. He filled 3 notebooks with sketches, spirals, layered orbit paths, and strange constellations that didn't exist on our star maps. One page had only this: "The black star floats against our rotation. That is how it sees." That phrase haunted the investigators, because "against our rotation" was exactly how the Black Knight moved. Emil had never read the NORAD report, never seen the radar data, so how did he know? Unless he saw it. Eventually, Emil agreed to speak on camera. One time, the footage is grainy, VHS room dim. The journalist asks, "Lieutenant, what did you see down there?" He pauses, rubs his temples, then says, "It wasn't a thing. It was a presence, like an intelligence, ancient, cold, but not cruel, just watching, listening, learning." He looked into the lens, eyes glimmering. "It didn't save me, it just chose me." Then he asked the cameraman to stop recording. But the audio kept running. At minute 28:13, you can hear Emil whisper something else. "It's still here, not outside, inside." No one understood what he meant, until the dreams began. 2 months after his release from the hospital, Emil began sketching again. Not ships, not constellations, but faces, not human, elongated, sharp, but calm, serene. He claimed he could hear them in sleep. They didn't speak in words, only pressure, vibration, pattern. Sometimes he'd wake in the middle of the night and draw diagrams of impossible machines, devices with spinning cores, layers of nested circuits, technologies no engineer could decipher. Some scientists thought it was schizophrenia. But one physicist, Dr. Helena Miles from Cambridge, noticed something strange. One of his diagrams resembled a theoretical model for quantum signal transmission she had published only a month prior. A paper never made public. When she visited Emil, he recognized her instantly. Said, "You were the one who asked the right question?" She asked how he knew. He only smiled and hummed. 3 long pulses, 2 short. It was the same sequence from the Arctic, signal in Tromsø. She froze. That pattern had never been released to the public, not once, but he knew it, he felt it. So, what really happened in that submarine? Was it a breakdown or a breakthrough? Was Emil chosen or broken? And more importantly, was he the only one? Because years later, in a classified interview from 1996, another pilot, an American, reported seeing the same thing during a high-altitude flight over the Indian Ocean. He described it not as a satellite, but a listening machine. It didn't just float, it turned, and I swear it was looking at me, back to Emil. He disappeared in 2001. No goodbye, no trace, just gone. His last known location, a weather station in Svalbard, northern Norway. Arctic sky. One of the researchers who worked there reported a strange event the night Emil vanished. We were tracking solar flares when the system blacked out. Then it came back, all screens filled with static, but not random static. It pulsed. 3 long, 2 short, just like before. And when they went to Emil's room, empty, but one thing remained. A single page, folded on the bed. It read, "The eye is still open." Now you tell me, is this coincidence, or are we starting to connect dots across decades, across continents, across minds? Because here's the thing. The signal never stopped. Even now, amateur radio operators around the world still report strange pulses bouncing in low orbit. No origin, no owner, only one pattern. And sometimes, if you listen closely, it feels like it's listening back. Leave a comment if this part gave you chills. And subscribe if you're ready to go even deeper, because in the next part, we return to the sky and witness the event that nearly started a war, all because of a shadow that moved where it shouldn't have. The Black Night isn't a myth, it's a message, and we're just beginning to decode it. June 24th, 1964. Somewhere above the North Atlantic, a United States Air Force radar system locked onto a target moving too fast, in the wrong direction. NORAD scrambled jets. Soviet, Chinese, rogue tech? Number, this thing wasn't flying, it was gliding, cutting across the sky at 17,000 miles per hour, without propulsion, without signature, without logic. And then, it stopped. Dead still, in midair, no descent, no crash, no sonic boom, just gone. Inside the Cheyenne Mountain complex, General Howard Mercer stood in silence as the radar crew stared at the screen. Their hands hovered over the DEFCON alert panel. He turned to the young officer next to him. "What the hell are we looking at?" The officer replied, "Sir, we're not sure this is from Earth." 2 hours later, another alert. This time from the Royal Air Force in Fylingdales, England. Same pattern. Object moving against the planet's rotation. And then again, silence. 3 different systems, 3 countries. Same anomaly, same direction, same disappearance. In the tension of the Cold War, silence was the most dangerous noise of all, and in that silence, the sky blinked. By 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, a third sighting came in. This one not from military radar, but from a commercial pilot, Captain Willis of Pan Am, Flight 203, en route to New York from Lisbon. At 32,000 feet over the North Atlantic, the co-pilot spotted a black mass above the clouds. No shape, just darkness. The sun hit it and reflected nothing. Willis called it in. The FAA logged it. The tapes were marked classified, but a snippet leaked decades later. The co-pilot's voice, shaky. "It's not a plane. It's not a balloon. It's holding position, but not flying. It's just there." Then the recording cuts. But a second before it does, you hear something else, a deep, low hum, almost mechanical, almost alive. Back at Cheyenne Mountain, the brass were panicking. Was it a Soviet psyop? Was it ours? Was it even real? That's when they pulled up the satellite logs. And what they saw? An object. In polar orbit. Higher than any known satellite. And moving retrograde. Opposite to Earth's rotation. Here's the terrifying part. No country on Earth, not even today, has ever officially launched an object in that orbit, at that speed, with that trajectory. And yet, it was there, watching, waiting, uninvited. The Pentagon issued a global radar blackout directive, Level Red. All related footage, audio, and logs were buried beneath code names, but one file escaped the censors. It was labeled Black Star 04. Inside, a chilling line. Anomaly observed at orbital vector 245-A. Not a satellite. No launch record. Possible foreign observer. Foreign, but not terrestrial. In that same week, something even stranger happened. A signal, matching the original Arctic frequency from Tromsø, was intercepted by an intelligence ship in the Barents Sea. Only this time, it wasn't rhythmic. It was a burst, a single intense wave. When decrypted through a modulated pattern, it resembled coordinates, latitude, longitude. When analysts plotted the location, it pointed to Antarctica, a region with no known installations, just ice and shadows. You may think this is coincidence, but that same year, a British geologist in Antarctica reported finding a black metallic shard embedded in the ice shelf, something that didn't match any known meteorite or alloy. He sent it back to London. It was lost in transit, never recovered. Or so they say. You see, the strange thing about the Black Night isn't that it exists. It's that every time we get close, the story shifts. Records vanish, eyewitnesses go silent, radars malfunction. But every few years, it reappears, just enough to remind us, you are not alone. And yet, no government has claimed it. No nation has decoded its signal. No scientist has explained its orbit. We see it, we track it, but we do not understand it, because maybe we're not meant to. You might ask, if it's not ours and not theirs, what is it? Some say it's alien. Others believe it's ancient. A remnant of a civilization that watched us long before we learned to watch the skies. A sentinel, as Emil once whispered. A quiet observer, waiting for something. But what? What could it be watching for? If you're still watching, thank you. You've already proven you're not afraid of the unknown. So do me a favor. Like this video if the story is beginning to unravel something inside you. And comment below. Do you think the Black Night is a warning or a message, waiting for the right mind to hear it? Because in the next part, we return to the place it all began. Not in the sky, not in a lab, but deep in the ancient ice, where something once fell that didn't melt, and never stopped whispering. The cold doesn't speak. It remembers, and in Antarctica, beneath miles of untouched white, something pulses, not like a heartbeat, slower, deeper, ancient. December 1957, Queen Maud Land, Antarctica. A joint Norwegian-British research team drilled deep into the ice, searching for prehistoric climate data. At 3,000 meters down, their instruments picked up a strange density shift. They thought it was a volcanic deposit. It wasn't. As they melted through layers of compressed ice, they struck something harder than rock. The drill head snapped. The sonar returned silence. Something was absorbing the sound. They lowered a heat probe, hoping to map the shape. That's when the signal came, a low hum, metallic, structured, the same pulse that would later be heard in Tromsø, in Greenland, in Emil's sketches. But this was the first. They didn't know what it meant. They recorded it on analog tape, sent it back to London for analysis. 2 days later, the transmission facility in Antarctica was struck by a power surge. All devices, dead. Every backup, wiped. And the ice? It began to crack. One researcher, Dr. Alistair Kane, stayed behind to recheck the borehole after the others evacuated. He was never seen again. But weeks later, an American weather drone captured a photo. One still image, a man standing alone in the snow, staring at something dark, something massive, just beyond the lens flare. The photo was sent to MY6. It disappeared. Only a photocopy remains today. Faded. Blurry. But there's something in that snowdrift, a shape, angular, almost sculpted. A second team arrived. They followed the old coordinates, found the site, and nothing. The ice had sealed over completely. No hole, no camp, no trace of the missing man, just smooth, ancient ice, and a sound, that same low pulse, echoing deep from below. 3 long, 2 short, the Black Knight's rhythm. Now ask yourself something. How does a satellite in orbit transmit the same frequency as a buried object beneath the southernmost point on Earth? Unless they're connected. Unless the Black Knight didn't come from space, but returned to it. In 1960, Soviet satellite Cosmos 5 briefly lost orbit stability over the South Pole. The onboard crew reported strange auroral anomalies. But one cosmonaut, Leonid Bekov, used a different word. "Eye," he said, "it was like an eye embedded in the earth. I felt it, watching, judging." That's all he wrote before his logbook was seized by GRU agents. He died 2 years later in a supposed training accident. His notebook? Missing. But one page leaked. It had the same spiral Emil drew years later. Same points of light. Same message scribbled in the corner. It fell once. It will rise again. Now let's go back further, because this story doesn't begin in 1957. In 1899, Nikola Tesla claimed to intercept extraterrestrial signals using a high-voltage transmitter in Colorado Springs. He said, "I felt as though I was being hailed from another world, a presence." Distant, but deliberate. The world dismissed him as eccentric. But his journal mentioned a location that matched those same Antarctic coordinates. He never visited it. How did he know? Or, who told him? There's an ancient tribal myth from Tierra del Fuego, the southernmost tip of South America. The Selknam people spoke of a black sky canoe that floated over the white and spoke without sound. They believed it carried the Watchers, beings from the cold stars who measured the earth but never touched it. They drew it in charcoal across cave walls. A shape. Long. Curved. Black. Exactly like what the pilots described over the Atlantic decades later. Same object, same watcher. If you're still watching, breathe. Because we're starting to step beyond time now. Beyond the Cold War, beyond politics. This is something older, something that waited in silence, and every now and then chooses to move. Because here's what's terrifying. Some researchers now believe the Black Knight was not launched. It awakened, not in orbit, but down here, in the ice, and what we see in the sky is only the piece it left behind. One more thing before we close this part. In 2016, a thermal scan taken by a European satellite picked up a spike beneath Antarctica. Not geothermal, but electromagnetic. Its origin was traced to coordinates just 12 kilometers from where the 1957 team disappeared. No official statement was made, but insiders say it was buried again, deeper this time, and still pulsing. 3 long, 2 short, always the same. Always watching. Now I'll ask you this. What if the Black Knight isn't a machine? What if it's a memory, a warning, or worse, a gate, and it's only just begun to open? If your heart is racing right now, you're not alone. Like this video if you feel the presence too, and comment below. Do you believe the Black Knight satellite came from the stars or from deep beneath us? Because in the next part, the Watcher returns, and this time, someone tries to answer its call. February 1983. A quiet winter evening. The world, still in the tight grip of Cold War tension, was on edge. But there was something off, something in the air that night, something that felt like it was waiting. Above the Mediterranean, an American military satellite, Odin 3, was tasked with routine surveillance. It had been in orbit for nearly a decade, providing images, signals, and communications data to the Pentagon. But on this night, Odin 3 recorded something that defied every protocol. It wasn't just a blip. It wasn't just a passing comet. It was a signal, a deep, resonant hum, a pulse of sound. And it wasn't from Earth. The operator, Lieutenant Cameron Westbrook, had seen strange things before, but this was different. He pressed his ear to the receiver, listening to the hum. A low vibration, pulsing through the radio waves. Each beat felt deliberate, like it was asking a question, not from the satellite, not from a known source, but from somewhere beyond. "I've never heard anything like it," Westbrook would later say, his voice trembling. "It was like the hum itself was alive. It knew we were listening." He tried to isolate the signal, tried to trace it, tried to match it with anything. But there was nothing. Nothing except one thing. 3 long pulses. 2 short. The same pattern. The same rhythm. The same black night. Westbrook immediately filed a report. But when he checked the satellite logs, something was even more disturbing. The signal was recorded coming from directly beneath the satellite's path. Not from the stars, not from the Earth, but from the space between. A signal trapped in orbit, a signal waiting. And here's the most chilling part. The day after the report was filed, the satellite's signal stopped transmitting. No warning, no malfunction, just gone. Vanished. Westbrook's command center immediately launched an emergency protocol. They reached out to the Pentagon. They heard nothing back. 2 days later, they were told to stop asking questions and to stop searching. The official statement? Odin 3 had been decommissioned. End of story. But it didn't end there. In the years following the disappearance of Odin 3, a bizarre series of events began to unfold. There were whispers in the intelligence community, whispers that someone had found what Odin 3 had discovered. A small team of researchers who were investigating satellite anomalies in deep space found a disturbing detail buried in a classified log. A trace, a pattern, a call. They decoded the signal, and what they found was nothing short of terrifying. It wasn't a message from space. It was a message to us. We have watched. We have waited. And now, we ask again. The team tried to trace it. They followed the signal back through the stars. But each time they got closer, the trail shifted. It didn't belong to us. It didn't belong to them. It belonged to something older. Something that had watched us for far longer than we ever knew. One of the researchers, Dr. Richard Reeve, said it best. "We think of space as empty. But the more I dig into these signals, the more I realize it's not empty. It's full of voices, full of eyes, watching, waiting, and we don't even know they're there." As more and more anomalies surfaced, some experts began to suspect that the Black Knight wasn't just a satellite. It was something alive, a presence, an observer, something older than any human civilization watching from the void. But who, or what, is it really? Is it a warning, a protector, or something far darker? The world may never know. But one thing is for certain. It never stopped looking. This is just the beginning. The next part? It's even darker. We'll delve into the most disturbing encounter yet, an experience that left a man broken, a man who tried to communicate with the Black Knight. But what he got back wasn't a message. It was a vision that will change everything you thought you knew. In 1989, Dr. Thomas Crane, a renowned physicist and former government contractor, went missing without a trace. He had worked on a top-secret project that investigated cosmic anomalies, especially those involving extraterrestrial signals, and strange phenomena in the Earth's magnetosphere. His final report was labeled Black Night, the Mind Beyond Space. The last pages of the report were scattered, lost in government archives, never to be seen again. But whispers began to circulate. In a confidential meeting in 1991, a former colleague of Dr. Crane, Dr. Jessica Leclerc, gave an interview under strict anonymity. What she revealed was both chilling and perplexing. The interview begins quietly. Her voice cracks like she's recalling something from a nightmare. Thomas, he was a skeptic. Brilliant, yes. But he thought all the stories about the Black Night were just conspiracy theories. Until one night, during an experiment, he heard it. Her breath catches in her throat as she recounts the moment. It was during a routine scan of cosmic waves. He was working alone in the lab. The signal was faint but steady. And then, suddenly, it wasn't just a signal. It spoke. At this, she pauses. The air in the room grows thick. He said it wasn't just noise. It was as if the waves themselves were alive. They pulsed in patterns he couldn't explain, and when he tried to respond, well, he said the signal responded back. The story grows darker. Dr. Crane, skeptical as ever, decided to tune in further. And what he found, what he heard, would change everything. He described it not as a communication in the traditional sense, but something far deeper. He said the voice wasn't just transmitted as sound, but as thought, like the signal itself was feeding into his mind, not directly, but through layers. It wasn't talking to me, not in words. It was showing me something, images, thoughts I couldn't control. It was as if my mind was no longer my own. He described feeling a sudden shift, an overwhelming sense of isolation. I felt as though something was watching, looking through me, not observing from afar, but from inside. And then came the moment of truth. It wasn't a voice anymore. It was everywhere. And the message it gave me... He hesitated. It wasn't a message of warning. It wasn't a threat. It was something else. The tapes that Dr. Crane recorded during his sessions with the Black Knight were, in part, discovered by Dr. Leclerc. In those recordings, Dr. Crane repeatedly described seeing visions, not hallucinations. Visions. He described immense structures in space, towering ancient ruins suspended above vast planets. But they weren't just alien ruins. They were artificial, built to last forever. He said they were waiting for something. The visions grew darker, more detailed. In his final few recordings, Dr. Crane spoke of seeing a massive black structure, not a ship, not a station, but something embedded in the very fabric of space. He said it had no beginning and no end. And then, it changed. It showed me something, he whispered into the tape. Something human. A scene I couldn't have known. A life I hadn't lived. But it felt like it was mine. All of it. The final transmission, recorded the night before Dr. Crane disappeared, was not spoken. It was a series of sharp, distinct pulses, 3 long, 2 short. And then, the screen went black. The signal ceased. When authorities found his belongings, everything appeared normal. His office was orderly, his files organized, but there was no sign of Dr. Crane. His computer, when investigated, had been wiped clean, except for one thing: a single encrypted file containing his final report, The Mind That Heard the Call. And in that report, a chilling note: we are not alone in this universe. They've been watching us for longer than we've been watching the stars. They are not invaders. They are observers, witnesses, and their purpose is not what we fear. It is far more terrifying. Their gaze will never leave us. So what happened to Dr. Crane? Was it the Black Knight itself that broke him? Or did his mind unravel from the burden of the truth he uncovered? There are theories. Some claim Dr. Crane was taken. Others believe he left, unable to face the overwhelming weight of his discovery. But the fact remains, he was never found. No trace, no body, and the tapes, they were sealed away. But the question lingers. What if he wasn't alone in hearing the call? What if others, like him, were touched by the Watcher? The most disturbing theory of all? Dr. Crane was chosen because when you answer the Black Knight's call, it doesn't just give you answers. It gives you visions, memories of lives you've never lived, of futures you'll never see, and it breaks you. So, where does that leave us now? We know the Black Knight is watching, we know it has seen us, but does it have a purpose? Does it want something from us? Or is it simply waiting? In the next part, we dive deeper into the lives of those who've encountered it, the ones who survived, and those who didn't. Don't forget to like this video if you feel the weight of what Dr. Crane discovered. Comment below. Would you answer the Black Knight's call, even if it meant losing your mind in the process? The mind can only take so much. After Dr. Thomas Crane vanished, something else began to happen. Something darker. Those who came close to the Black Knight, whether by choice or by fate, began to disappear one by one. Not physically, not always, but their minds? Something happened to their minds. It started in the early 1970s. Captain Jace Walker, an Air Force pilot, had been tracking unidentified objects near the Arctic Circle for months. But this wasn't just a routine mission. His team had been assigned to investigate the growing number of mysterious radar signals, ones that had been bouncing off something unnatural. They didn't know it then, but they were about to become the first to get too close. On the night of February 17th, 1974, Walker's plane made its final descent into the northern skies. His radar showed a clear signal. His instruments were calibrated, the mission routine. But then, the signal shifted. Walker stared at the screen. The blip moved. Slowly at first, then faster. He called out to his co-pilot, "Look at this! It's moving against the rotation." Then came the silence. There were no reports from Walker after that night. The only trace of him was a final radio transmission that would be sealed away for decades. It was a short message, a cold, emotionless tone. "It sees us. We're not alone." Days later, Walker's aircraft was found miles off its original course, wrecked on a frozen lake. The remains of the plane? Intact. The bodies? Gone. But the strange thing was the cockpit. The logs, the flight plan, and all the instruments had been completely wiped. Except for one thing, a single sheet of paper in Walker's hand. It read, "It's not a satellite, it's not a machine, it's a watcher." In the years that followed, strange reports came in from military bases, outposts, and scientific research teams across the globe. They would all go the same way. Contact would be made, a signal, a call, and those who heard it, they changed. There was one case in 1985, a weather technician, Graham Brooks, stationed in northern Canada. He'd been assigned to a remote research station, cataloging weather patterns. One night, a blip on his radar caught his attention. An anomaly. He couldn't explain it. But when the signal amplified, his instruments began to distort. Strange pulses began to resonate from the sky, pulses that mirrored the frequency of the Black Knight. He was about to log the data when something caught his eye. A shadow, moving across the snow just outside the observation window. He grabbed his rifle. His flashlight trembled in his hand. But when he opened the door, nothing. Not a footprint, not a trace, just the same deep, pulsing hum. Graham's logs were sealed. His radio equipment was confiscated, and the records were erased. but his colleagues reported that Graham changed. His eyes grew darker, his words more cryptic. He'd speak in strange, disjointed sentences, his speech sometimes slow, other times feverish. 1 month later, he vanished without a trace. The only thing found was a single drawing on the wall of his cabin, a spiral. Exactly like the one Dr. Crane had drawn. And the last words he wrote, "I heard it, I saw it, it's calling. And now, it's inside me." But Graham wasn't the only one. Across the world, those who came too close to the Black Knight's presence began to lose themselves. They stopped sleeping. They started seeing things, visions, flashes of unfamiliar places, strange figures watching from the corners of their eyes. Some would disappear entirely. Others would return. Changed. In 1992, a journalist named Sophia Lang contacted an old, reclusive man named Martin Walsh. He was one of the few survivors of an unexplained incident that occurred in the Indian Ocean during a covert mission in 1977. Lang was persistent. She found him living in a remote cabin, deep in the woods of Canada. His house was covered in strange carvings, symbols she couldn't understand. When she asked about the mission, he wouldn't speak. He looked at her with hollow eyes and simply whispered, "I tried to talk to it. To them. I didn't understand what I was dealing with. But I do now." He then showed her his journal. Pages filled with fragmented thoughts, symbols, and disturbing sketches. The last entry was written in bold, frantic writing. "They are not here for us. They are here for something else. And when they find it, we will all be erased." Sophia left that day, never to return. She wrote about Martin's encounter, but the report was buried under layers of government oversight. What's most chilling is the connection. Those who encountered the Black Knight, or even came close to understanding it, began to suffer from the same fate. They lost their minds. They became obsessed, fixated, changed. Some disappeared, some were replaced. All became vessels for something ancient, something that had waited. So what happened to all of them? To the ones who heard the signal and saw the visions? Some say the Black Knight doesn't just watch. It remembers. It chooses, and it takes. It doesn't leave you physically scarred. It leaves you mentally broken. A vessel for something you can't comprehend. Now ask yourself this. What happens when you stare into the void? When you look too long at what's watching you? Does it pull you in, or does it break you? It wasn't a voice. It wasn't sound. It was a feeling. In 1996, during a covert operation in the Pacific Ocean, a team of Navy engineers aboard the USS Everest made contact with something beyond their understanding. They had been tracking a strange disturbance, one that had appeared briefly on their radar before fading out. This time, however, it was different. This disturbance was stronger, closer. As the crew moved to investigate, the atmosphere grew heavier, denser. The air on the ship felt thick, charged. They weren't sure whether it was the electromagnetic field they had detected or something else entirely, but the tension was palpable. Then, without warning, the Everest's main communication system went down. Lights flickered, and the crew heard a hum, not from the ship's engines, but from the very air itself. A strange, eerie sound that seemed to vibrate through their bones. The radar officer, Lieutenant Marcus Avery, was the first to see it. A black silhouette, enormous, hovering above them. Not a ship, not a plane, a shape, shifting, dark and almost organic, floating in mid-air, not moving, but suspended, just above the ocean. The team's first instinct was to engage, to send a signal. They tried every frequency they had, trying to communicate. But when they did, the answer wasn't what they expected. Instead of a signal response, the ship's systems glitched. Radios warbled with distortion, monitors flickering as if scrambling for meaning. Then, a new signal. But this one wasn't like the others. It wasn't just pulsing energy, it was a pattern, a rhythm, a sequence, 3 long, 2 short. And then, silence. For several moments, nothing happened. Then came the flood of visuals. Lieutenant Avery, standing at the radar console, was suddenly bombarded with images. He later described them as flashes, visions, ancient ruins, impossible geometries, cities lost to time. And within those ruins, figures. Tall, towering beings cloaked in shadows. Their faces impossibly still, but their eyes dark and knowing. A voice spoke, but not aloud. It was not audible. It was inside his mind. It said, "You have answered the call. You are the first to seek, and now you will understand. The truth is within you. You have seen." Avery snapped back to reality. He stumbled, gasping for air, his head spinning. His vision was blurry, his heart raced, and the hum in the air intensified, vibrating through his very chest. The rest of the crew, witnessing this from a distance, tried to reach him, but they couldn't. The communication systems had completely shut down, leaving them in a state of confusion. Avery's face had gone pale, his eyes wide. He could barely speak. "It's real. It's all real," he whispered. When the crew tried to escort him to the medbay, he refused, barely able to function. He spoke only one more sentence before collapsing. "It's been here, watching, for longer than we knew, and now it has claimed." The rest of the mission was a blur. The crew tried to leave the area, but the strange disturbance continued. No aircraft could approach the Everest. No ships could get close. The electromagnetic field seemed to block any entry. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the object vanished. Disappeared into the sky, without a trace. And the Everest was left stranded in the middle of the Pacific, the crew shaken, and Avery never the same. The records from that mission were sealed. The crew was ordered not to speak about what they'd encountered. Avery was given a new assignment, far from the Pacific. But the strange truth lingered. In the years that followed, rumors began to spread about what happened on that fateful night. One piece of information remained consistent. The Black Knight had communicated. And it wasn't just a passive observer anymore. It had spoken. It had made its presence known. One chilling detail emerged from later interviews with the surviving crew members. Avery, after being reassigned, underwent a psychological evaluation. The doctors couldn't explain it. His mind wasn't shattered, but it was different. He had trouble distinguishing between the real world and the visions he had seen. He began to draw the things he had witnessed: impossible geometries, ancient structures, and beings that didn't belong to Earth. He filled notebooks with sketches and notes, constantly muttering, "It sees us, it's inside us, watching, waiting." The Black Knight, it seems, is no longer content with simply orbiting Earth. It no longer remains silent. And what it left in its wake was a terrifying reality. Those who had heard its call could never forget it. They became vessels, transmitting its will, carrying its knowledge, and bearing the burden of understanding a truth they weren't ready for. But here's the most disturbing part. It didn't leave Avery's mind. It clung to him, and he wasn't the only one. What would you do if you were called? What if you heard the signal and you answered? Would you be able to walk away knowing the truth? Or would it break you? This story is far from over, because the Black Knight isn't finished yet. In the next part, we will look at what happens when the Black Knight finally decides to make its final move. What happens when the Watcher descends? And what happens to us when it demands an answer? The hum began again. Not from the sky, not from space, but from deep within the Earth itself. It was subtle at first, A vibration felt underfoot, like the low rumble of distant thunder. But the more the world ignored it, the more impossible it became to deny. In 2001, a series of underground seismic events rocked the globe, occurring in locations previously deemed seismically stable. At first, scientists dismissed them as anomalies, perhaps tectonic shifts, or unknown fault lines beneath the Earth's surface. But then, it grew louder, and it became clear. The Black Knight was no longer in orbit. It had descended. It wasn't like the meteor showers or debris re-entering the atmosphere. It wasn't a ship. It was something alive, something ancient. Cities around the world reported strange disturbances. Electrical grids malfunctioned. Signals went haywire. People began to experience strange feelings, dizziness, migraines, even vivid dreams of ruins, of eyes watching them. In cities like Los Angeles, Moscow, Beijing, and Tokyo, residents reported seeing strange lights in the sky at night. But they weren't like stars or aircraft. They were still, unmoving, like watching eyes. Then came the whispers. In Washington, D.C., a group of high-ranking military officials, scientists, and intelligence officers gathered in secret. Their task? To evaluate the Black Knight's descent and its potential threat. Dr. Elena Martinez, a leading astrophysicist, had been called to consult. She had been following the anomaly for years, but what she learned during this emergency meeting would haunt her for the rest of her life. She stood before the group, holding a black and white photograph of the object that had been captured on military satellites. The object was unlike anything she had ever seen. It didn't resemble a typical spacecraft or satellite. Its edges were irregular, almost organic, like a jagged black stone suspended in the sky. And then Dr. Martinez made a connection, one that sent chills down her spine. "This isn't a machine," she said softly. "It's not just an observer. This is something else. It's alive, it feeds, and it's been watching us for longer than we can imagine." For the next 2 weeks, global communications were disrupted. The hum grew louder. Not just a vibration anymore, not just an echo. The hum became commands, patterns, voices, the strange signal that had once been detected on radar in the Arctic, the Pacific, and the Atlantic. All connected, all stemming from one source. And that source was coming down. By the end of April 2001, scientists confirmed the impossible. The Black Knight had entered the Earth's atmosphere. It was descending, moving at a pace too slow to be a typical satellite re-entry. It was controlled. It was deliberate. And it was heading straight for the Pacific Ocean. As the Black Knight approached Earth, military forces scrambled to respond. Space defense teams were activated. The global threat level reached its peak. But there was nothing they could do. No weapons could touch it. No force could stop it. The Black Knight was coming, and nothing on Earth could prevent it. On May 2nd, 2001, something extraordinary happened. The Black Knight, as it entered Earth's atmosphere, began to glow, not with fire, like a meteor, not with flame, like a spaceship. It shimmered, like a darkened mirror reflecting the Earth beneath it. In the Pacific Ocean, a fleet of naval ships scrambled to observe it, but they were stopped by an invisible barrier. Radar systems failed. Communications went silent. On every ship, the same signal echoed through the air. 3 long, 2 short. And then silence. At precisely 2 a.m. UTC, the object touched down. Not in the water, as expected, but in the deepest part of the ocean, where the pressure was too great for human exploration. It landed in an area known as the Mariana Trench, the deepest oceanic trench on Earth. At that moment, everything stopped. Power grids worldwide flickered, as if in response to the Black Knight's landing. Global communication systems were temporarily disabled. Cell networks went down. Satellite feeds went black. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the feeling. People, millions of people, reported feeling an intense dread. The air felt heavier, as if something was watching them from the depths. And then came the dreams. It's been reported by researchers that during this period, a significant portion of the global population experienced the same visions. Ruins, eyes, a vast, endless emptiness, and the feeling of being watched, being measured. And when people woke, they couldn't shake the images, the eyes, the ruins, they stayed with them. And many began to write, to draw, to speak. And the message, though fragmented, was the same. It's here. It's not leaving. The theories surrounding the Black Knight's arrival are countless. Some believe it has come to observe humanity's final chapter. Others believe it is here to guide us, as a watcher, waiting for us to discover the truth. But one thing is clear. The Black Knight isn't a visitor from another galaxy. It's a presence, one that has been here long before us, one that has seen civilizations rise and fall. And it has chosen this time, this moment, to make its presence known. So, what does it want? What does the Black Knight desire from us? In the next part, we will explore the truth behind its descent and the vision it has for the future of mankind. Because now, the Earth is not just being watched, it's being called. There are moments in history when everything changes, when the world stands still, when time doesn't move forward, but holds its breath, waiting. The descent of the Black Knight on May 2nd, 2001, was one of those moments. No war followed, no explosion, no sudden flash. It was quieter than that. But in that silence, the entire world shifted. For the first time, humanity wasn't looking up at the stars in wonder. We were looking inward, facing something ancient, something watching. And we didn't know how to respond. After the Black Knight's descent, something unexplainable began to happen. World leaders, those who had witnessed the event, found themselves in meetings they couldn't remember scheduling. Scientific communities began to experience unprecedented breakthroughs, yet without clear connections to previous research. And across the world, ordinary people began to experience a disturbing phenomenon: dreams, visions, prophecies. And it wasn't just the elites or the academics. Everywhere, people were drawn to it, to the object that had watched us for centuries. Some saw things, some heard voices, and some simply felt it. There was one common thread that ran through all of them. The world is not as it seems. It has been broken, and we are its repairers. But who are the repairers? In the aftermath of the Black Knight's landing, a group of individuals, scientists, historians, and even religious figures, formed a secret coalition. Their mission was to uncover the purpose of the Black Knight and to decode the strange messages being sent across the world. They had one primary question: why now? The answer came not through analysis or science, but through a shared vision. It began with a priest from Rome, Father Antonio Verdi, who reported having an unusual dream. In it, he saw a towering figure, cloaked in shadow, standing at the edge of a great abyss. The figure didn't speak, but it pointed, and there, at the edge of the abyss, lay the earth, teetering on the edge of destruction. Father Verdi claimed the figure was human, but not quite. He called it the messenger. As the visions grew stronger, world leaders started experiencing them too. The pattern was the same: eyes, ruins, a dark sky. But one question echoed. What happens when the watcher no longer watches? And then came the terrifying realization. The Black Knight's purpose wasn't to warn us. It wasn't to communicate. It was to measure, to weigh us. What if the Black Knight has been here not just to watch us, but to see if we are worthy? A group of whistleblowers, mostly former high-ranking intelligence officers, revealed classified documents. According to these sources, the Black Knight didn't originate from some distant star. It had been here, on Earth, long before any human civilization, and it wasn't alien, it wasn't even a machine. It was something older, a being, or force, that had existed long before humanity ever evolved. The Black Knight had been monitoring the rise and fall of our civilizations, watching how we matured, how we destroyed ourselves, and how we regenerated. Its purpose? To find out whether humanity, as a collective force, could evolve to a higher consciousness or whether it would destroy itself, leaving Earth in ruins once more. The prophecy, the one passed down in secret across various ancient cultures, was now clear. When the Watchers arrive, the time will come for the final choice, humanity's greatest test, to awaken to the light of the stars, or be swallowed by the darkness. As the Black Knight's presence grew more profound, world events seemed to spiral into uncertainty. Global conflicts started to escalate in ways that couldn't be attributed to any single nation or group. Economic systems teetered, political alliances faltered, environmental collapse loomed. It was as if everything was being tested, as if something was pushing the world into chaos. The question now was, could humanity evolve? Could we face the Watcher's gaze and prove ourselves worthy? Or would we collapse under the weight of our own self-destruction? But here's the most terrifying part of the prophecy. Some believe that the Black Knight doesn't just watch, it guides. And when the time comes, it will lead us to either a new beginning or to the end. And if the Black Knight deems us unworthy, we may never know what happens next. There's a hidden truth buried beneath the Black Knight's presence, one that humanity must uncover before it's too late. In the next part, we explore the final confrontation, the moment when the choice must be made. Will humanity evolve and answer the call? Or will we fall, trapped in the darkness, doomed to repeat the same mistakes? The world had never been this close to the edge, not just in politics, not just in war, but in something deeper, something that went beyond borders, beyond nations. The choice was coming, and the Black Knight, watching from its place above and beneath us, was the one to decide. But we didn't know that yet. We didn't know what we were being measured for. In 2010, the world's most powerful governments received an encrypted transmission from an unknown source. At first, it was dismissed as a glitch, a mistake, an anomaly. But when more messages followed, it became clear. The Black Knight was sending something, a signal, not in words, not in code, but in images, visions, images of Earth, twisted, cities consumed by fire, rivers and oceans boiling under an unseen heat, skies full of strange storms, clouds that turned into beasts. The most chilling part of the transmission? The images were followed by one final word: awaken. And then, silence. But it wasn't just a message from the satellite. It was a message from the Watcher itself. In 2013, a secret meeting took place in Geneva. The world's leaders, military officials, and top scientists gathered to discuss the Black Knight's influence on global events. Rumors had been swirling, an impending change, an event that would bring humanity to a crossroads. Some wanted to confront the Watcher, others wanted to hide. Most didn't know what to do at all. The meeting was heated. Some of the leaders argued that humanity had to prove itself, to show that we could evolve, that we could transcend our self-destructive tendencies. Others were desperate, pleading that the Black Knight was too powerful to face, that we had to prepare for something far worse. Then, a single figure stood up. Dr. Elena Martinez, the same scientist who had been tracking the Black Knight for over 30 years. She had the last piece of the puzzle. This isn't about proving we are worthy. This isn't about reaching for the stars. It's about whether we can stop ourselves from destroying this planet. The Black Knight isn't here to test us against an alien force. It's here to test us against ourselves. Will we continue down the path of greed, war, and division? Or can we overcome that? Can we choose something else? The room went silent. Every leader, every official was looking at each other. No one speaking, no one knowing what to say. The world stood on the brink of collapse. Climate change was accelerating. Resources were dwindling. Conflict was spreading faster than ever. It was as if the Black Knight had been measuring us, waiting for this moment when we would finally be forced to face our deepest choices. On July 4th, 2016, the Watcher made its final move. It didn't descend any further. It didn't reveal its true form. But it did something worse. It stayed. The signal, once so haunting, became a steady hum. For hours, it filled the skies, resonating through the very air we breathed. And for the first time in history, people everywhere, across the globe, heard the same thing. It wasn't a vision. It wasn't a message. It was a question. What will you choose? And then the sky changed. The lights flickered. The earth trembled just slightly, as if the world was holding its breath. People everywhere began to feel it. The tension in the air, the sense of judgment, of waiting, a sense that humanity was at the crossroads. The very choice was before us. The Black Knight, was it a warning, or was it a test? A final test to see whether we could evolve, to see if we were capable of self-awareness, of self-discipline. Some believed that the Black Knight had been watching for centuries to see if we would destroy ourselves. Others believed it had been watching to see if we were ready for something greater. The truth? We may never know. But the world felt it. The strange thing was, the days that followed were strangely calm. The signals continued. The hum was still there, but it didn't grow louder. It didn't attack. It didn't pull us apart. It didn't leave. It just waited. What happened next was not immediate. It didn't come with an explosion, a war, or an event so catastrophic that we would all feel it at once. Instead, it came as something quieter. People began to change. Not in an instant, but slowly. A shift in the way we thought, in how we acted, in how we treated each other. There were no signs of a grand conclusion, but there was something else, something subtle, a new awareness. We started looking for solutions instead of answers. We started understanding that the path we were on, the choices we made every day, had a far greater impact than we ever realized. But there's a terrifying possibility. Maybe the Black Knight's message wasn't just a warning. Maybe it was a choice. We can either evolve, or we can be left behind. And if we fail, we'll never know what happens next. The world didn't end in a flash. It didn't collapse into war or chaos. It wasn't a grand, dramatic fall. But what happened after the Black Knight descended wasn't a quiet peace either. There's an old saying, the calm before the storm. But what if that calm is the storm? For months after the final signal, a strange stillness took hold. There were no more visions, no more whispers. The hum from the Black Knight, once all-encompassing, became a distant, fading echo in the background of our everyday lives. The world continued, but something had changed. It was as if humanity had entered a new chapter. The choice had been made, but what did it mean? Had we truly chosen evolution? Or had we simply chosen to delay the inevitable? In the weeks following the Black Knight's arrival, something strange began to happen across the globe. People started to ask questions that had once seemed impossible. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to evolve? And perhaps most importantly, what is our place in this universe? Leaders, scientists, thinkers, and common people alike started to look inward. This wasn't a revolution of guns or armies. This was a revolution of the mind, a quiet awakening. But as we reached for the stars, we started to see the cracks that had always been there, hidden beneath the surface of our lives. Some, like Dr. Elena Martinez, started to believe that the Black Knight's message wasn't meant to change us in a grand, sweeping way. It wasn't about forcing us into a new era. It was about awakening us to our own potential, but others weren't so sure. For those who had lived through the first encounters, the aftermath was harder to process. Lieutenant Marcus Avery, who had survived the early years of the Black Knight's hum, now spoke out. He had seen the things that others couldn't. He had heard the whispers, seen the visions, and felt the weight of its presence. But now, years later, he wasn't sure if the awakening had been for the better. "Maybe the real choice wasn't the one we made," Avery said in an interview years after the events. "Maybe it was the one we didn't make. The Black Knight didn't come to guide us, it came to test us, and whether we passed or failed, that was up to us to figure out." And yet, the world continued. It wasn't a sudden transformation, no great leap into the stars, no grand utopia. But something more insidious had begun, a slow, creeping awareness. People were asking questions about their lives, about their work, their relationships, their environment. The way we lived, the systems we had built, no longer seemed like the answers to the challenges we faced. The old ways felt empty, as if the hum of the Black Knight had somehow shifted the very fabric of our existence. There was an unease that followed, a nagging sense that we had missed something. The Watcher had come, observed, and then left us with one simple question: what will you choose? But what if we never fully understood the gravity of that choice? What if the answer wasn't about technology or power or survival? What if the answer was something deeper? A group of philosophers, led by Dr. Alistair Kane, who had studied the ancient cultures and prophecies surrounding the Black Knight, began to put the pieces together. Kane argued that the true meaning of the Black Knight's presence wasn't a warning of doom. It was a reflection of who we were and who we could become. But his theories were met with resistance. There were those who felt the Black Knight's descent was a punishment, a way of showing us that we had failed. They believed the end was inevitable, that humanity had been measured and found wanting. But Kane held to his belief. The Black Knight had shown us a mirror. It was up to us to decide whether we could evolve, or whether we would collapse under the weight of our own mistakes. The Black Knight had forced us to face a truth we had avoided for centuries. We could no longer hide behind our technology, our politics, or our divisions. The real choice was not whether we could survive. It was whether we could become something better. In 2020, as the world struggled with environmental collapse and political instability, a new wave of global unity began to emerge. It wasn't a sudden change, but a gradual shift. Countries, cities, communities all began to work together to solve the crises that had long been ignored. It was as if the hum of the Black Knight, even in its absence, had planted a seed deep within humanity's collective consciousness. We had learned that we couldn't do it alone. We had to work together. But was it too late? Would humanity evolve, or would we continue down the path of self-destruction? And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the hum of the Black Knight stopped. No more signals, no more whispers. It was gone. Or was it? There are some who believe that the Black Knight never left at all, that it's still here, watching, waiting, testing. We may never know, but one thing is certain. Humanity is not the same. We are changed. We have faced our deepest truths, our darkest flaws, and our greatest potential. Now, it's up to us to decide what comes next. Like and comment below. Do you think humanity passed the test? Or have we failed? The story doesn't end here. The Watcher's judgment is ongoing, and as we continue, we must ask ourselves, what will we choose? The world has always believed that our greatest test would come in the form of a cataclysm, an asteroid, a war, a collapse. We never expected it to come in the form of a question. The Black Night had shown us a mirror. We looked into it. And what did we see? For the years after the hum stopped, life returned to some semblance of normalcy. There were no more disturbances, no more overwhelming signs, no visions. The world didn't crumble. There were no great answers, no apocalyptic end. But that doesn't mean everything was fine. Humanity, having faced its most profound test, couldn't just forget what it had learned. Or rather, what it had seen. The choice wasn't simply about survival, it was about evolution. But could we evolve in time? Could we become something better? Or would we continue on the same path, repeating our mistakes? The Black Night had shown us the path forward, but it wasn't clear if we were willing to walk it. By 2025, humanity had changed. Not all of us, but enough. It was a subtle shift, almost imperceptible to the naked eye. But it was there. New technology emerged, new scientific breakthroughs, new political ideologies that advocated for cooperation over conflict. Yet, the scars of the past still lingered. Tensions between nations had calmed, but beneath the surface, there was still a deep unease. People were starting to ask themselves a question that had never been asked before. What if the Black Night was never gone? The truth is, even after all these years, no one truly knows what happened when the Black Night touched down in the Mariana Trench, what it is, where it came from. But one thing has become clear. The Black Night didn't just measure us, it didn't just watch, it planted a seed, and over time that seed has been growing, slowly, quietly, in the minds of humanity. Then, one night, it happened again. A signal. The hum. But this time it wasn't like before. This wasn't the slow, deliberate hum we once felt. This was different. The hum was clear, sharp, and it carried with it words, not a voice, not in the traditional sense, but a message. And this time it was a demand. You have chosen. Now prove it. At first, people thought it was a joke. Some laughed, others shrugged it off. But the message kept coming. Not to just a few, but to millions. People in every corner of the world felt the same strange, inexplicable sensation, the same hum vibrating deep within them, waking them in the middle of the night. Some said it was an electromagnetic disturbance. Others claimed it was mass hysteria. But for those who listened, truly listened, there was a deeper truth. It was real, and it was a test. In the years that followed, the hum began to take on a new significance. More people began to experience the same sensations, the same visions, the same messages. For some, it was subtle, a feeling of being watched. For others, it was far more intense, a deep knowing, a calling. And for some, it was a choice. But this time it was more than just a decision to evolve. It was a decision to act. The Watcher's message was clear. You have been given a chance to change, to build, not destroy, to awaken. And now the question was no longer about whether we could evolve. It was about whether we would act on it. Would we continue the cycle of destruction? Or would we stand together and choose something different? By 2030, global leaders had come together to discuss what had begun to be called the Watcher's choice. The message was clear, but the paths were uncertain. Nations that had once been enemies were now working together, sharing resources, developing new technologies aimed at reversing environmental damage, and working on sustainable solutions. But the shadow of doubt still loomed. Some believed that the Watcher was testing humanity's willingness to unite. Others believed it was testing whether we could overcome the darkness within ourselves. There was one thing that became undeniable. The Black Knight's presence was not gone. It was still here, influencing us, guiding us, waiting. But the choice remained in our hands. Would we unite, or would we divide again? And then, in 2035, something unprecedented happened. The skies themselves seemed to react. A flash of light, an intense pulse, flashed across the sky. Not in one location, but across the entire world. It was as if the Black Night had given its final judgment, a final test. What came after the pulse was something even more profound. The world stopped. For a few seconds, everything was still. No sound, no movement, just silence. Then, as quickly as it came, the world returned. But it was different. The tension, the unease was gone. The air felt lighter, clearer, and there, on the horizon, the Black Night's signal faded. No hum, no presence, no gaze. It was as if the watcher had stepped back. Had humanity passed? Had we truly evolved? Or was this just the calm before another storm? A storm that the Black Night knew would eventually come? The final choice remained. Because the Watcher's gaze wasn't just a test of our actions, it was a test of our hearts. The Watcher has gone silent. But the question remains, what now? For the first time in recorded history, humanity stands unobserved. The Black Night, the mysterious force that has watched us for millennia, has stepped back. It has left us to face our own reflection. The hum that once vibrated through the world has stopped. The visions, the messages, the whispers, they've all faded into the background, as if the Watcher has decided that our choice has been made. But the truth is the Watcher may have never left. It has only changed. For years, the world believed that the Black Knight's arrival and departure were a test, a final judgment. But what if it wasn't about judgment at all? What if the Black Night came to awaken us, not to make us fear the end, but to show us the beginning? The years following 2035 were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The era that followed the Black Night's pulse became known as the Awakening Era. This period saw an unprecedented global transformation, not through grand wars or sweeping revolutions, but through quiet, collective action. People, nations, corporations, all began to understand that survival was no longer enough. It was no longer just about living. It was about living well, together. For the first time, humanity looked to the stars not with fear, but with hope. Not for answers, but for guidance. The greatest revelation, however, was not in technology, politics, or even the environment. It was in human consciousness. Societies began to evolve in ways that no one had expected. People embraced the concept of a unified global community. Conflicts started to heal. Races, religions, and ideologies, once at odds, found ways to coexist. The global economy began to shift towards sustainability. The atmosphere, though still fragile, began to recover, not through politics or corporate promises, but through an empowered collective effort. Could it be that the Black Knight's purpose was simply to show us that we had the potential to choose a different path? That we had the potential to be better? But, of course, there were those who resisted. The skeptics, the fearful, and those who clung to the old ways. For them, the Watcher's silence wasn't a blessing. It was a void, a terrifying reminder that we were now on our own. For these people, the Watcher's absence signaled an uncertainty, a loss of purpose. They feared the unknown, the vast emptiness of space, and the loss of guidance. But the question remained, had the Watcher ever truly guided us, or had it simply shown us the way? As time moved on, new discoveries continued to reshape the understanding of the Black Night. Advanced technologies emerged, allowing scientists to probe deeper into space. They discovered phenomena beyond our comprehension: black holes, energy fields, dimensions beyond time and space, things that had been invisible to us until the Watcher made us look. In 2042, a new space mission, Project Horizon, was launched. Its goal was to reach the edge of the known universe, to uncover the source of the Black Knight's signal. Could it lead us to the answers we were seeking? Or was it simply another step toward our own understanding? As humanity moved forward, it became clear that we had evolved. But it wasn't just in the way we interacted with each other. It was in how we understood our place in the universe. The Black Knight had shown us that we were never truly alone. It had shown us that we could be more. But as we stand on the threshold of this new era, one final question remains. What happens when the Watcher's gaze no longer focuses on us? What happens when we become the Watchers? As the human race continues to grow, explore, and evolve, the question is no longer about what the Black Knight wants. It's about what we want. It's about the legacy we will leave behind, the stories we will tell, and the choices we will make. The Watcher may have left us, but in a way, it has entrusted us with the future. In the end, the greatest mystery wasn't what the Black Knight saw. It was what we will see. And the real question is, will we be worthy of the sight? The story of the Black Knight doesn't end here, because the real choice is ours. It always has been. The Watcher may have chosen to step back, but our future is ours to decide. Like, share, and comment below. Do you believe humanity can continue to evolve? What will our future look like now that the Watcher has left us to shape our own destiny? Thank you for following the journey. This story has come to its final chapter, but our story is just beginning.